Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your express route to getting informed. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty fundamental: building good habits. And, just as important, ditching the bad ones. Our main source here is James Clear's fantastic book, Atomic Habits. And our mission, really, is to unpack how habits actually work. We want to go beyond the usual tips and give you insights that, can really help transform things long term.
Yeah.
So we've all been there, right? You hit that wall, you're trying, putting in the effort on a new habit, but it feels like nothing's happening. You're just stuck. What's going on there?
Oh, yeah, that's super common. And James Clear talks about this. He calls it the plateau of latent potential.
Mm.
Think about an ice cube. You heat it up maybe from 25 degrees,
Well,
30, 31,
yeah.
adding energy. Right. But it still just looks like ice.
Right, no visible change.
Exactly. But the work isn't wasted. It's stored potential. The big change, the melting, happens suddenly at 32 degrees. So when someone finally hits that breakthrough, people might say, oh, overnight success.
Yeah, ignoring all the heating up.
Precisely. It's all that unseen work done when it felt pointless
Yeah.
that actually makes the big shift possible. It compounds.
That ice cube thing really sticks with you. Great visual. It shows why you got to persist even without immediate results. But you mentioned something deeper, too, about identity. How does that play into habits?
Well, this is fundamental. Basically, behavior that doesn't align with how you see yourself. It just won't last. Like, say you want more money, but if your identity is really tied up in being a consumer, not a creator, well, you'll always feel pulled towards spending or wanting better health, but prioritizing comfort deep down, relaxing wins over the gym. Always. It's really, really hard to change habits if you don't tackle the underlying beliefs about who you are. Goals are one thing, but if your self-image hasn't shifted, the habits won't stick. The strongest motivation, the intrinsic kind, happens when habit truly becomes part of your identity.
Wow. Okay. That feels like a real game changer. It's so different saying, I want to be a writer versus I am a writer. That shift from wanting to being.
Absolutely it is. And think about what keeps habits going. Pride. It's huge. If you're proud of your hair, you'll naturally do things to care for it. Proud of your biceps, you'll fight not to skip that workout.
Or you're knitting.
Exactly. If you're proud of those scarves you knit, you'll happily spend hours doing it. Once that pride, that this is me feeling kicks in, you defend those habits.
Okay. So how do we build that new identity, that pride? Clear has this idea of votes, right? He says every action is like a vote for the kind of person you want to become. No single vote changes everything instantly.
Right.
But they add up. They build evidence for that new identity. That's why small habits are so powerful. They're the proof. Like, write one page, you're voting writer. Practice violin, vote musician. Start a workout, athlete, encourage your team. Leader. It's not just the output. It teaches you to trust yourself, to believe you can be that person.
That's the practical path. It's a two-step process, really. First, decide who you want to be, what principles, what identity. Second, prove it. Prove it to yourself with small, consistent wins. Your identity isn't carved in stone. You choose it, reinforce it with today's habits. Ultimately, habits aren't just about results. They're about becoming someone.
Okay, so if that's the why, the identity piece, how do we actually do it? James Clear lays out the 4 laws of behavior change. Let's dig into the first. Make it obvious. I mean, it starts with awareness, doesn't it? You can't change what you don't even notice you're doing.
Absolutely. And there are a couple of simple but really effective exercises for this. One is pointing and calling. It's a safety thing from like Japanese railways. Workers point at a signal and call out its status.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, my partner does it before trips. Got keys, got wallet, got glasses. Just verbalizing makes it conscious.
I could see that.
The other is the habit scorecard. Just list your daily habits. Good, bad, neutral. Write them down. You'd be surprised what pops out when you actually look at it.
I bet. And for making things obvious, this implementation intentions idea. It sounds almost too simple, but the results are pretty stark.
Incredibly powerful. It gets rid of the vagueness.
Yeah.
There's this British study, 2001, around 250 people wanting to exercise more. 3 groups. Group 1 tracked exercise. Group 2 got motivation talks. Group 3 got the talks plus made a specific plan. During the next week, I will do 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day at time and place.
Okay, so a really concrete plan.
Exactly. And the results. Groups 1 and 2, only about 35–38% exercise weekly. Group 3, 91%.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Massive. Motivation alone wasn't the key. The specific when and where plan made all the difference. People who plan are just way more likely to follow through.
Okay, plan made. A where? Now, how do we actually bolt these new habits onto our lives? I like leveraging routines I already have. What about habit stacking? How effective is that?
Habit stacking is brilliant. It uses momentum you already have. You just link a new habit you want to, something you already do consistently. Like, after I sit down to dinner, I will say one thing I'm grateful for.
Uh,
Or, after I get into bed, I will give my partner a kiss. Or even, after I put on my running shoes, I will text someone where I'm running.
hmm.
You're using existing anchors in your day. Makes the new thing feel much more automatic.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Piggybacking. And talking about making things obvious. Our environment. How big a factor is that? I know I'm definitely influenced by what's around me, visually.
Environment is huge, huge. Think about it. Something like 10 million of our 11 million sensory receptors are for sight. What we see is probably the biggest trigger for our behavior.
10 million, wow.
Yeah. So even a tiny change in what's visually around you can massively shift what you do. It's crucial to design your spaces home, office sell them with cues for good habits, and get rid of cues for bad ones. The classic example is that Vietnam War heroin study. Many soldiers got addicted over there, but when they came home, 9 out of 10 just stopped, almost overnight.
Just like that.
Yeah, because the triggers were gone. In Vietnam, stress,
Yeah.
access, buddies using.
Yeah.
Back home, totally different environment, none of those cues. It shows self-control isn't just willpower. A lot of it is having a disciplined environment. It's way easier to resist temptation if it's not staring you in the face all the time.
That really flips the script on self-control. It's less about grit, more about smart design. Okay, that leads perfectly into law number 2, make it attractive. We know habits run on that dopamine feedback loop. What's really interesting, though, is it's the anticipation of the reward, not just getting it, that gives the big dopamine spike, right? That drives the action. Like those mice poking a box 800 times an hour, or slot machine players spinning 600 times. That anticipation is addictive.
Right. So the trick is, how do we use that anticipation for good habits? A really effective technique is temptation bundling. You pair something you want to do with something you need to do.
Okay, bundle them up.
Yeah. So say you want to read the news, but you need to practice gratitude. Link them. After my morning coffee, I'll say one thing I'm grateful for. Need. After I do that, I'll read the news. Want.
Ah, I see. The want becomes the reward for the need.
Precisely. Or you want to watch sports, but you need to make sales calls. After lunch, I'll call 3 clients.
Yeah.
After I do that, I'll watch sports. Want. It makes the need habit way more attractive because a reward is immediately attached.
I love that. Like ethically bribing yourself. And it's not just our own desires, right? Social influence is massive in making things seem attractive.
Oh, absolutely massive. That MIT astronaut class example is wild. 4 out of 10 people in one small robotics class became astronauts. If you wanted to go to space, could you ask for a better peer group? Or that study about IQ, your best friend's IQ at age 11 predicts yours at 15. We just soak up what's around us. It even ties back to those famous Asch conformity experiments. People would give the wrong answer just to fit in. Most of us would rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves. We find behaviors attractive if they get us approval, respect, praise from our tribe.
So given that social pull, how do we make habits attractive internally, especially ones that don't get immediate applause? Can we kind of reframe how we think about them?
Yes, definitely. Reframing your mindset is key. Instead of I have to wake up early, get to wake up early and work on my goals.
Ah, the get to switch.
Exactly. Had to cook dinner for my family. It changes the whole feeling from burden to opportunity. Same for exercise, not a chore, but time to build endurance. Or saving money, not limitation, but building future freedom. Focus on the benefits. Reframe the task.
That's a powerful mental shift. Okay, law 3, make it easy. Seems obvious, but there's more to it, isn't there? This idea of repetition over perfection.
It's critical. Habit formation is basically behavior becoming automatic through repetition. The more you do something, the more your brain actually changes to get efficient at it. Neuroscientists call it long-term potentiation, but Hebb's law sums it up. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Fire together, wire together. Got it.
Think of it like carving a path in your brain. Each repetition deepens the groove, makes it easier to walk that path next time. So it's not about how long you try, it's how often you actually do it. Frequency trumps duration for building habits.
That makes so much sense. Building the pathway and talking easy. Just reducing friction. How much does that actually impact things?
It's incredibly powerful. Reducing friction is maybe one of the most effective strategies. Smart environment design is key here. Look at Japanese lean manufacturing. They obsessed over removing wasted movement, redesigning workstations so workers didn't have to twist or reach.
Right.
The result? more efficient factories, and more reliable products. Back in '74, American TVs needed service calls 5 times more often than Japanese ones.
Wow.
And you can do this at home. Prime the environment. Make good stuff easier, bad stuff harder. Hide the junk food. Delete the distracting apps. Even a tiny bit of friction can stop an unwanted habit. It's about designing your world to nudge you in the right direction.
Setting yourself up for success from the start, which is why that 2-minute rule is just genius.
Absolutely. The rule is, when you start a new habit, make it take less than 2 minutes. It just demolishes that initial friction, that feeling of, ugh, this is too much.
Yeah, hard to argue with 2 minutes.
Exactly. So instead of read a book, it's read 1 page, meditate for an hour becomes meditate for 1 minute, do the laundry becomes fold 1 pair of socks. The point is just to start. Make the entry point ridiculously easy. Momentum usually carries you after that.
It's like building a tiny on-ramp to the bigger habit. Love it. And for the ultimate ease, automating habits. That seems like the gold standard.
It really is the ultimate way to lock in future behavior.
Yeah.
You use what Clear calls commitment devices. It's a choice you make now that controls your actions later. Like Victor Hugo, locking away his clothes so he had no choice but to stay inside and write The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's commitment.
Right. Other examples. Buying snacks in single-serving packs. Asking a casino to ban you if you struggle with gambling. Paying for that yoga class up front so you lose money if you skip.
Yeah.
And this leads to thinking about one-time choices that automate good habits. Buying a great mattress for better sleep. Getting blackout curtains. Unsubscribing from junk email. Turning off phone notifications. Using website blockers. These single actions pay off again and again over time with zero extra effort.
I can definitely vouch for that both ways. When I was writing my book, I had my assistant change my social media passwords every Monday, logged me out everywhere.
Wow.
Friday, she'd send the new ones. Weekend was free. And the amazing thing, how fast I adapted. First week, I realized I just didn't need to check it constantly. It was just easy before. Once that ease was gone, I gravitated to more important stuff. But the flip side is real too. Netflix autoplay. It makes it easier to keep watching than to stop. Technology makes passive consumption effortless, pulling us away from harder, more rewarding tasks. Which brings us nicely to the fourth law. Make it satisfying. And this is tricky because our brains evolved for immediate gratification, right?
Exactly. Survival brain.
Good habits often mean paying a cost now for a future benefit, like going to the gym. Bad habits give pleasure now, but the cost comes later, junk food. And present you usually beats future you.
Which is why the cardinal rule of behavior change is so vital. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Early on, good habits can feel like pure sacrifice. You work out, but you don't look different right away. It takes time for the intrinsic rewards to kick in. So in the beginning, you need that immediate reward, something to keep you going while the bigger, delayed rewards build up. That feeling of success, even tiny success, is crucial.
And that's where habit tracking is so good. It creates that immediate hit of satisfaction, seeing progress visually, moving paper clips between jars, keeping a food log, seeing your workout streak grow, filling a loyalty card, even just watching page numbers go up in a book. They're all visual proof. Reinforces the behavior, feels good right away.
Yeah, habit tracking is clever because it does 3 things at once. 1, it's a visual cue, reminds you to do the habit. 2, it's motivating, you see the streak building. 3, it's satisfying, feels good to mark it complete. It's that visual proof that you're casting votes for the person you want to be. That's immediate intrinsic satisfaction right there. But there's a potential trap. Goodhart's law.
Goodhart's law.
Yeah, it basically says, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If you optimize only for the number, like hitting a specific weight or logging X hours, you might start doing things that hit the number but miss the point, like crash dieting or pointless busy work. Just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's the most important thing. Need to be mindful of that.
Good point. Track wisely. Okay, finally, for making habits really stick, accountability. Clear talks about a habit contract.
Right. It can be verbal or written. You state your commitment, the habit, and the punishment if you fail. Then you get 1 or 2 accountability partners to sign on. There's a great example of an entrepreneur, Brian Harris, wanted to lose weight, contract with his wife and trainer, Mrs. Sue targets, pay the trainer $100, failed to weigh himself, give his wife $500, missed sprints, had to wear a rival team's hat to work.
Ouch, that would work?
Exactly. The more painful, public, and immediate the consequence, the more effective it is at keeping you on track. Now, moving into sort of advanced territory,
Hmm.
it's worth mentioning finding the right game for yourself. A niche where your natural inclinations, maybe even your genes, give you an edge. Scott Adams, the Billboard guy, talks about this. He wasn't the best artist or the funniest writer, but being pretty good at both, that's rare. At his business background, suddenly he had a unique niche.
Combining skills.
Yeah, if you can't win by being better, win by being different. Combine your skills to reduce competition, make it easier to stand out, rewrite the rules to play to your strengths.
That's smart. Don't just play the game, design it. But even once you find your game, there's the big, often ignored challenge, boredom. I remember that quote from the coach. Winners just keep playing when it's boring, when it's annoying. Mastery needs tons of practice, but practice gets, well, routine, boring. How do you push through that?
That's where the Goldilocks rule comes in handy. You need to work on tasks that are just manageable difficulty.
Not too hard, not too easy.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right on the edge of your current abilities.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 50-50 chance of success or failure. You need enough success to feel satisfied, but enough challenge to stay engaged, to feel desire. That sweet spot keeps boredom at bay. And finally, for really long-term growth, you absolutely need reflection and review. Without it, we just make excuses, rationalize, drift. We don't know if we're actually improving. Top performers are rigorous about this. Think the Lakers' career best effort reviews, Eliud Kipchoge's detailed notes after every run, Katie Ledecky tracking everything. It's how you refine and improve, not just repeat.
Wow, what a comprehensive look at habits. We went from that plateau of latent potential and the power of identity through the 4 laws. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying with all those practical tools.
Right, the stacking, the bundling, the 2-minute rule.
Yeah, and then into finding your niche, battling boredom, and the need for reflection. It really covers the whole life cycle.
And maybe a final thought to tie it all together. Think about happiness. There's this idea that happiness is the space between one desire being fulfilled and a new desire forming.
Hmm.
Desire gets us started, initiates action, but it's pleasure and satisfaction that sustain it,
Yeah.
that make us repeat the habit. Happiness isn't something you chase directly. It sort of ensues. It's a byproduct of effective, meaningful action.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So the challenge for you listening is, what identity do you want to vote for today? What's one small action, maybe just 2 minutes, you can take right now to cast that vote, to prove it to yourself? Because it's in those consistent actions that real change and maybe that enduring happiness really begins. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.